Seek and Destroy. And today we're going to have a conversation about comic books, again, as usual, because that's what we do here. But this is actually from a guy named Eric D, who commented on my recent post on my community board. And he said, "Hey, I'm kind of new to comics. Like, who's your favorite artist and what do you recommend to new readers?" He kind of asked that kind of question. And that's such a loaded question. It's not something I felt like I could answer in a post, without just giving like a short answer that is, I feel like Eric deserves more because he's been coming here for a while and everything. So I didn't want to just give him like a short answer. So I thought, you know what, let's just do this impromptu live episode. I came up with the idea last night after I read Eric's comments, and I said, that could be a fun conversation to just have and see if anyone shows up. Now, I know it's Memorial Day weekend. It's May 30th of the year 2021, and I don't know how many people will actually be here because I'm sure some people are out celebrating or having fun, or it's dinner time, depending on where you are in the world, that kind of thing. But I would figure if for the few people who might be here, or if even no one shows up, I have a stack of books here that I would say I would recommend, and then on some that I don't have here that I would also recommend. So we'll kind of go through, the different comics here. So the main thing I want to say is, when it comes to figuring out a comic that you're going to try out or read or where you want to start and everything, before you get into all that, because it can be very overwhelming. There's a lot of comics out there, obviously, for 80 plus years there's been comic books, and it's kind of like, where do I start? Would I ever appreciate Golden Age or Silver Age because of the art styles are a little bit more quaint in comparison to today's art styles, and stuff like that. Like, where do you fit in this? I usually tell people it's much like when you dove into movies, when you dove into music, any other form of art. If you dove into it, you probably dove into it without really thinking about it, and you kind of just went towards what jumped out at you, whether it's visually or anything like that. Comic books are a visual medium, so typically you go what jumps out at you visually. And so you'll see a piece of artwork and you'll go like, hey, that looks pretty cool. That's something I might want to pick up. You grab it, you flip through it if it's on the shelf, or if it's digital, you can look at the preview pages, like the first 3 preview pages on Comixology or something. And I think that's a good way to be a judge of, okay, this is worth taking a risk on, because that's what it's going to be no matter what. You're going to take a risk. Your first year or two's worth of comics, most of that's going to be a risk. Like you're going to be going outside sometimes your comfort zone, and you just need to be okay with that, but also not think that's a bad thing or overthink it at all. You just need to go, all right, you know what? I like this art. This seems interesting. Or you know what? Now that you guys live in kind of a golden age where there's been a million movies and TV shows, like this is not like what I had when I was a kid. There's a lot of movies and TV shows out there, and you could go, hey, you know what? I liked the Daredevil TV show. That was kind of neat. Maybe I'm interested in reading something Daredevil related, in which case we can recommend a few things. So you have other forms to build your foundation now. When I was growing up, we had a couple movies here and there, like the Batman movies with Michael Keaton and stuff, and Christopher Reeve Superman, and we had some TV shows and Electric Company Spider-Man, and and all that stuff, and Transformers. So you kind of had something to build a basis on, a foundation on, and then you go from there. But nowadays you have way more options. There's cartoons, comics, there's all kinds of movies, TV shows now, shows that go right to Disney Plus, to different apps. Like there's so much. There's so much, in fact, that it's almost impossible for one person to keep up with all of it, no matter how diehard of a fan they are. I'm not saying they don't exist. It's just, it's hard. And you kind of are at a point now where you got to pick and choose what you like. So for me, when I first got into comics, I was in the hospital. I had a head injury, and my mom got me my first stack of comics. And in that stack, there was Batman stuff. Batman's a really easy character if you're trying to get into superheroes. Batman is a very easy gateway into comics because most people like Batman. Most broad mass audience members know who Batman is. They kind of know his origin already, or they know enough to where reading a book won't completely confuse them or throw them off, because a lot of Batman stories aren't really entrenched in deep continuity. They'll make references sometimes, but a lot of people write Batman as if a new reader's coming on board and checking him out for the first time. So I'd say Batman's a good gateway character. And the X-Men used to be, I would say, with the Jonathan Hickman stuff that's going on right now, you can definitely bring in new readers to that for sure. But I feel like eventually that status quo is going to go back to the way they were, because eventually people are just going to scream and yell enough to where the X-Men are going to go back to looking closer to this, this Jim Lee's 90s stuff. They're gonna keep making noise eventually, and people will eventually get tired of this current status quo, and it'll go back. So it's hard to jump in during a point where the status quo is in flux and they're trying something new, because typically when they try something new, they'll do it for a couple years, maybe 5-6 years, and it will probably go back. So X-Men I feel is a hard one to recommend now, at least current X-Men, but I have some older X-Men stuff that I can recommend too. Hey everyone who's popping in, feel free to jump in the chat here, and tell me some comics that you read when you first got into comics. And thank you for the thumbs up, whoever gave me that. Tell me a little bit about the first comics you read, and then we're going to get into the second half of this episode, which is me recommending stuff for newer readers that I think you might want to check out. And I'll talk about some indie books and some mainstream books, and then I'll have you guys suggest some, and I'll read your comments as well. So like I said, my mom gave me my first stack of comics, and it was X-Men was in there, Batman was in there. There was, I think, some Crisis on Infinite Earths, random issues of that, where Supergirl died and where Flash died, I think. So there's been, I jumped in at weird times. I came in right around the Crisis of Infinite Earths era, and I read from then on with DC and Marvel. So I came in around Craven's Last Hunt and for Spider-Man, and kind of mid to late 80s kind of area. Drake, what's up? For me, I'd recommend Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles issue 1. And hey, Seek, what's up, Drake? Sorry, I have an itchy nose. I don't know why. Tell me which Ninja Turtles #1. Like, would you recommend the current IDW stuff? Would you recommend the original black and white one? Because for those who don't know about Ninja Turtles, if you watch the cartoon or got into it because of the cartoon or any of the live action movies, the original comic is way different. It's black and white, which I love, but it was kind of a parody of Daredevil comics. So instead of the hand, which was the ninjas in Daredevil, you had the foot. The foot was the Ninja Turtles, fighters or ninjas, I guess. So there was a lot of parallels between Daredevil and Ninja Turtles in the beginning, because it started off as almost like a parody, but kind of also its own thing of Daredevil. And then it broke off and went crazy, and then like really soon after, they sold the cartoon rights, and it became a completely different thing, but still fun. So yeah, I would say which one? The original black and white one, Drake says, for sure. So yeah, I would say if you're younger and you're a kid, or you have kids and you're trying to get them into comics, I would ease them into the cartoony Transformers, cartoony Transformers, but Ninja Turtles, I personally would recommend that stuff. Because like I said, it's pretty violent. They all wore red bandanas. They didn't have different colors, different ones, like we know from the cartoon. So if you're older and you want to get into Ninja Turtles, yeah, the original black and whites are awesome. They've reprinted them in hardcovers and soft covers, and they're fantastic. But if you have kids and you're getting them into comics, I would say go for the more cartoony or friendlier looking Ninja Turtles. I think you'll have a better time there, and so will the kids, I think. So that was for me, and like I got into Ninja Turtles very early on too, and I'm a big Kevin Eastman fan, as you guys know, and I was lucky enough to work with Kevin Eastman on a book once called Soul Star. So where he did one cover and then another cover, I did some of the pencils and he did the inks and finished it, and it was dream come true. He's an awesome guy, so I'm always down for supporting Ninja Turtles for sure. And then Drake said he'd also recommend the original Amazing Spider-Man comics from the 60s and 70s. I would too. Let's get into that. So let's start with Marvel. So here's some Marvel books I would recommend. Spider-Man, let's start there. Spider-Man's a tough one because I came in during the 80s with the Hobgoblin stuff, and he was in the black costume. I came in with Craven's Last Hunt, but during that time there was also a lot of Hobgoblin stories going on. So I came in around then. I can't really remember if that was a good jumping off point. I know it was a reason my mom wouldn't let me read Spider-Man after Craven's Last Hunt, because I read it and it ends with a very intense suicide. And then my mom was like, what the hell? This is supposed to be Spider-Man from like the Electric Company show with everything, that was on TV, or and His Amazing Friends, like the cartoon I watched. So my mom was like, okay, you can't read this anymore. This is way too intense. But the original 60s and 70s stuff, I feel still holds up. Like, I really like those. You can find the original in the Masterworks collections, or some hardcovers, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1. If you find those, they'll stay by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. I also recommend them. The classics are really good, but I also would recommend some stand one-offs, like the ones that kind of like stand off to the side. So one good one I think is Spider-Man Blue. This one is really great for new readers because the continuity that you might feel lost on, they explain in this. So this takes place after Gwen Stacy's death, but it's all about her death. It's Peter Parker recording a message to her after she's dead, obviously, and he's now living with Mary Jane. He's recording a message to her on the anniversary of her death, trying to just say feelings he never got to say to her. He's been bottling them up all these years, and he's just trying to get it out. So it's basically documents him doing that, but it flashes back to his earlier fights with the Green Goblin and the Rhino and the Vulture, and then leading up to Gwen's passing. And it's written by Jeff Loeb and drawn by Tim Sale, the team who did Daredevil Yellow, and who also did Hulk Gray, and obviously the Long Halloween and Haunted Nights and Dark Victory for DC Comics for Batman. So great team, a really, really great team. So I recommend this one because, like I said, I feel like it's a good Peter Parker story, has good Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy moments. It introduces you to like 4 or 5 of Spider-Man's biggest villains, like the Lizard and all of them. And it's kind of a drifting side continuity, so you won't feel like you're reading something that's like in the middle of a story. So I would recommend that. And yeah, I would recommend the 60s stuff. And I think someone also mentioned in here Ultimate Spider-Man. Caballero says, I came in during the Ultimate Spider-Man run of Spider-Man. So that's a good run too. That's more of a modern retelling of Spider-Man's origins, where they change some of the, elements of it, but still kind of keeping the tone of what the original Spider-Man comics did. And that's written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mark Bagley. And I also would recommend that if you don't care about reading like main continuity Spider-Man. It's just a fun Spider-Man read, the Ultimate stuff. Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 300, 361, all the Carnage and Venom stuff. Yeah, we'll get there. Don't rush me, Drake. In the Crow, yeah. So you're jumping ahead. It's like you've seen my stack here. But we're in Marvel right now, so let's try to focus. For I guess like fun, like if you want some like B and C or maybe even D listers, I always recommend the 1990s Heroes for Hire book. I thought that was one of the best books Marvel put out around that time in the 90s. And it featured like Iron Fist and Luke Cage. I think Deadpool eventually joined the team. That's a really solid run. That's just mindless fun. And I think if you're just wanting to see kind of a sneak peek at some of these other characters that don't always get major spotlights, I think that's a fun book to check out, me personally. But if you do want some of the bigger guns, I would say X-Men, Second Genesis, I think that's what they call it, or Mutant Genesis 2.0. This is written by Chris Claremont, drawn by Jim Lee. It's fantastic. You can find it in hardcover, softcover. This is a kind of not a retelling of the origin, nothing like that. It's definitely a continuation of past X-Men stories, but it is told in a way to where if it's your first X-Men book, you don't feel too lost because they kind of explain everything that's going on. So this collects X-Men number 1 through 7, which came out in 1991. And it's fantastic. And it has a battle with, the X-Men versus Magneto for the first 3 issues. Then they introduce you to Omega Red in issue 4. And then there's like an appearance by Bishop towards the end. There's a Ghost Rider crossover in issue 8 or 9, which isn't collected here. But this run was a lot of people's jumping on point if they liked the X-Men cartoon in the 90s. This was the comic book that was coming out during that run or during that show. And a lot of people jumped onto X-Men through this. I came in a little bit before this, but still really like that run. But if you do want to go back and read some older X-Men stuff, I would recommend Giant Size X-Men, if you can find it in hardcover or softcover. This collects Giant Size X-Men number 1, and then it has like a bunch of random issues that tie into that. But normally that would be like X-Men from like issue 94 or something like that onward. So basically what happened is the X-Men book got canceled because of low sales. So it got canceled around issues 50 or somewhere around there, 40 or 50, or maybe 60. And then from issue 60 to like 94, and I'm ballparking here, but from issues, whenever it got canceled till issue 93, I think, those were all reprints. They were just reprinting former X-Men stories from the first like 50 issues and reprinting those in issues like 60 through 93 or whatever, because sales were really bad. I think it's a book that's a little bit ahead of its time. And eventually Chris Claremont came around and did Giant Size X-Men, which had this team on it, which I always joke, you see a lot of people on YouTube complaining like diversity this, SJW that, like, and me, I'm not in that fight. I don't give a shit. I think everyone's just a whiny baby when it comes to that stuff, and they look for things to complain about, and that helps them gain a following, and that leads to monetization and money and a growth and stuff, and they're just grifters. They're all liars, and they're full of shit, because this is the most diverse thing that happened to the X-Men, was that they brought in like a Russian guy, a woman from Africa, a guy from Germany, a Native American, and a Canadian guy, and they brought them on to be the new X-Men team. I mean, if you saw this cover today with X-Men, and you would say, oh, that's forced diversity, it's like, or is it just time for the next evolution in storytelling for these characters? And that's what this was. And everyone hails this as one of the greatest X-Men comics. And I definitely agree that it changed the course and success of X-Men was because of this. So when people sit there and say, like, putting characters of color or people of different, races or whatever, or come from different backgrounds isn't a good thing in comics, it's like, yeah, but it certainly worked really well for the X-Men. And all of these characters are amazing. Like, they're all fantastic. So that's why I always laugh. I'm like, when I see these YouTubers complain about diversity and stuff, I'm just like, dude, you don't give a shit about that. Stop lying to your audience just to get clicks and views and rage clicks and stuff. Like, you're just a grifter, and you're a big crybaby. So to me, I'm like, we wouldn't have a lot of these books if there wasn't some fusion of people with other perspectives, and superheroes from different backgrounds. That's how this stuff stays around for a long time. So for Marvel, I liked, those for X-Men. But if you're a Wolverine fan, let's say you were like, hey, you know what? The X-Men, I want to get there, but I want to start with Wolverine. I really recommend Weapon X. I mean, you guys probably agree or disagree with me, but Weapon X is almost like poetry, but like a very violent poem. It's really well done. A lot of internal thoughts and dialogue, not a lot of external talking from Wolverine, at least. And it's basically documenting the days where he is on a table and they're infusing metal into him, and they're bringing him out into the woods with a helmet on him to program him, and they're brainwashing him to like kill animals like bears and things like that in the woods, until he finally breaks out. That is a really good book. It was originally printed in Marvel Comics Presents, and now it's in like a soft cover or hardcover. You can find it out there by Barry Windsor Smith. It's fantastic. Honestly, it's one of the best things out there for me, for Wolverine. And it's why I love that guy, is reading that book for sure. So Drake also says Amazing Spider-Man Return to Sinister 6. That's a good one. That's a really fun one. That's okay. You keep dropping suggestions if you want. And I'll read them when I catch up to them, because we're almost done with Marvel. I have a couple more suggestions to make, and then we'll move on to indie comics, and then, which you brought up, The Crow, so we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into some DC stuff before we end. After we discuss Marvel, has anyone read Judge Dredd? I've been thinking of trying to get into those. Also, side note, I really appreciate the discussion because I wanted to read more. Hey, you're welcome, Caballero. Yeah, we'll talk about Judge Dredd after this too. And we'll definitely get to DC here in a minute, Drake. Let's go do Marvel. Let's finish these up. Like I said earlier, I mentioned Daredevil. I'm a big Daredevil fan. I really love Daredevil Born Again. That is definitely a book I've handed to people who asked me about, hey, what should I read in Marvel? Born Again's a good one. And then also the Frank Miller written book, but drawn by John Romita Jr. It's called Daredevil Man Without Fear. That was my actual introduction to Daredevil when I was a kid. And it's still to this day one of my favorite Daredevil stories. It's really well done. It's his origin retold, with him going into the black costume before he gets, the armored up look to him. And I think even before the yellow costume that he originally had. So it's really well done. It's a retelling of his origin, and it's in softcover, hardcover, digital, all that. Daredevil Born Again and Daredevil Man Without Fear by Frank Miller. Awesome stuff. And then last, you might surprise you with this. I'm not a big Avengers fan, but I love the Hulk. And Peter David's run on the Hulk is the stuff I kind of grew up with. But also, I really like the Bruce Jones run of the Hulk that came out around the time of the Ang Lee movie. The first volume was called Return of the Monster. Those are great too. So if you see any Peter David Hulk books or Bruce Jones Hulk books, those are fantastic. And then obviously Planet Hulk, and World War Hulk. World War Hulk is okay. I don't hate it. I just don't love it. But Planet Hulk is phenomenal. So if you're a Hulk fan, and then the last thing, I actually have some Venom, obviously, Lethal Protector, and what Drake said, Amazing Spider-Man 300, which is the first appearance of Venom. If you can find that in a trade paperback, like Origins Venom, that's a good one. And then issues 361, 362, and 363 of Amazing Spider-Man is the first appearance of Carnage. So you could probably find that in a trade paperback, either called Carnage Classics or Carnage Savage Genesis, one of the two. And then, like he said, Maximum Carnage, another great book for Venom and Spider-Man stuff. So definitely pick those up. And then lastly, this is more for modern day. If you've been watching the MCU movies and you grew up with the MCU movies and you're like, hey, you know what? I really liked after Endgame, like we're in a new world now. The Avengers don't seem to be around anymore. We have no idea if they're still a team or not. What's going on? With all the stuff they're doing in WandaVision and some of the characters they introduced in Falcon and Winter Soldier and stuff like that, I'm not going to spoil anything here. But what I will recommend is that you pick up Young Avengers. Now, I don't like the Avengers. I've never really read a lot of Avengers comics. I read some Avengers West Coast comics, or West Coast Avengers when I was younger, because it had War Machine on the team, and I really like War Machine. But outside of that, I didn't really stick around too much with Avengers. Never really was a fan of the Avengers. I was always an X-Men kid. But when this came out, I was like, I'm going to give it a chance, because I met Alan Heinberg at a convention around the time issue 1 came out. And so I bought it, took a chance on it. And I love Jim Chung's artwork. So I picked this up, and this is a hardcover collection of the whole first run. But they also have them out in trade paperback and stuff like that too. And there's a second book to this too called now I'm blanking on it. It's like a post House of M story. So you could read this, then read House of M with Wanda going crazy, and then you could read I think it's called Children's Crusade. That's like the second volume, and that takes place right after House of M, I think. But it's good, and it's basically a couple teenagers show up and decide, now that the world has no Avengers team because they've been disbanded, they want to form the next group of the Avengers. Because Kang the Conqueror, a time traveler who used to fight the Avengers, they get wind that he's going to come back in time and attack. And if there's no Avengers to stop him, then he's going to win. So these kids create the Young Avengers. And there's some twists and turns with the Kang stuff. So again, I don't want to spoil it. But that's all I have to recommend for Marvel, at least for now. But if you have recommendations, whether you're watching now or later, definitely let them be known in the comments down below. Drake does say, and let's be honest, this is just me, but Venom Lethal Protector is no Maximum Carnage. I mean, I don't know. I like Lethal Protector. It sets up a status quo of Venom becoming more of an anti-hero and less of a strict villain. So I think it has a purpose, and I think it's good for new readers. And so there's a difference between loving something because you love it and knowing what to recommend to new readers. And that's the one thing I want to talk about. We're talking about throughout this episode is like, okay, I love Spider-Man. Like earlier I mentioned, Kraven's Last Hunt was my first Spider-Man book. I would not give that to somebody as their first Spider-Man book. I really, you can't control sometimes what you get when you're younger and comics are given to you. Like that was a gift to me from my mom. But if you are in a position to recommend something to somebody, I love Kraven's Last Hunt more than anything for Spider-Man. It's my favorite Spider-Man story, but I would not give that to somebody as my first recommendation. Just like I wouldn't give Maximum Carnage to somebody without giving them Lethal Protector first. So everything has a purpose, right? So some of these books that we're going to talk about today aren't even some of my favorite books. I just think they're good entry-level books for new people. But if you disagree, obviously let me know in the comments and stuff. So let's go to Indy real quick because Drake mentioned The Crow. I have The Crow right here. I have it in single issue, the original publishing version of it, and then one of the reprinted versions of it around the time the movie came out. I have the first hardcover, or one of the first hardcovers, which was black with a painted cover on it. And I have the special edition. And I've been thinking about getting the hardcover, but the hardcover is just the same exact. It's just this, just in hardcover. So I don't know if I will or not. But I really, really, really love The Crow. I mean, this is, to me, the peak of indie comic book making, because this is what James O'Barr created out of a real-life tragedy of losing his fiance, someone he was in love with, and she was, I think, on her way to come see him late one night because she had a car and he didn't, and she was coming to see him, and a drunk driver hit her, and she passed away. And James carried this intense guilt from that and channeled that into this comic about Eric Draven and Shelley Webster, who are engaged to be married on the eve of their wedding. They are killed, and Eric is carrying so much guilt and pain with him to his grave that he can't rest. His soul just won't go to the next world with Shelley. So it gets brought back by a crow, and it gives him 48 hours to get revenge on the people that killed him. This book is amazing, and it's written and drawn by James O'Barr. Nothing says blood, sweat, and tears from a creator than when they buckle down and write and draw it themselves, especially when they're not your traditional style of comic book artists that were around this time, and they're telling a story that's a little less conventional at that time. Not a lot of anti-hero books around this time when this came out, and Eric Draven does very heroic things, but is kind of an anti-hero in some way because he kills the people, but he lives in a very ugly world, a world not unlike our own sometimes. So I love this book. The Crow is, I can't even recommend this enough to people. If you love rock and roll, if you love poetry, if you love watercolor and beautiful art styles, like James O'Barr delivers all of those things in this book. Quotes from songs, Iggy Pop, like he's a big fan of. It's awesome. Honestly, it's a piece of him. Like James O'Barr found a way to put a piece of himself into a book through all that tragedy. And then this book gets made into a movie, and it stars Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee. And Brandon, a freak accident happens on set, and a fake gun goes off, and a projectile comes out of that gun and kills Brandon Lee. A 1 in a billion chance of something like that happening, and it happens to the star of this movie. And you can just, I don't know, I can't speak for James O'Barr, but I can imagine the pain he must feel that the book was inspired by a level of pain, and then it led into a movie that I only remember in positive light. When I think of that movie, I sometimes will go, oh, it's tragic what happened to Brandon, but that's the only blip of sadness I have, because I move right into how wonderful his performance is in that movie. Like, for a movie that's just like an action revenge story of a guy coming back from the dead and rock music's playing through the whole thing, some people would roll their eyes if you try to pitch that to them or tell them that's what the movie's about. But the movie's so much more, and that performance he gives is, as Iggy Pop says, it's incandescent. He is lit from within when he's in that movie. Brandon just gave a wonderful performance. So The Crow is a good one. I always recommend Spawn, but that is for people who maybe are struggling with going to church, struggling with their Catholicism, like I was. That's a good book, because it asks a lot of questions that you probably would get you kicked out of a church. It asks you, like, how do you go to heaven? How do you go to hell? Well, Spawn has different answers for those questions than what you hear in church and stuff. So I've always liked Spawn. I thought it was always a great book. And it's very, again, another anti-hero. Walking Dead, great book. Black and white, which I love. Black and white, like The Crow. The Walking Dead's a good one to recommend to a friend who's into horror movies. So again, if you're going to recommend a book to somebody, find out what their interests are. Oh, you like horror movies? Maybe you want to check out The Walking Dead. Or maybe if you like vampires, you want to check out Crimson. One of my favorite indie books by Brian Augustine and Humberto Ramos and Sandra Hope. This book's freaking amazing. It's by, it was originally by Cliffhanger Comics, and then they got bought out. And then this book disappeared for years. And then I tried to resurrect this book by reaching out to Humberto Ramos and Brian Augustine and asking them how much it would cost to buy the rights to this and release it for the company that I was working for at the time. And they set a goal that was very high. And I think they set it that high, or Humberto did, because he didn't want to sell it to us, because I think he was already in negotiations to sell it to Boom. So he was like, well, if you could beat Boom's offer, maybe you guys can have it. But we couldn't beat Boom's offer because Boom was a bigger company than we were. So it went to, good people over at Boom who are awesome. And they reprinted the first 12 issues in this volume, and then the second 12 issues in the second volume, because it only ran 24 issues. But this book is really great. And the sad thing is I have both volumes, but I can't hold the second volume up because the printing on it was so shitty. Sorry, Boom. I love you guys, but I think we could have done a better job printing this book. But the second volume, the day I got it in, it was fine. And then I started reading it, and halfway through reading it, it was sitting on my lap. All the pages came right out. The complete glue and binding gave out completely, only after having it for like maybe like a week at tops. But still, I do love the book, and I still have the second volume. I didn't want to hold it up and it fall apart on camera. But yeah, Walking Dead's a good one. Again, if they watch the TV show, it's an easy one to recommend. Crimson, The Crow. If they like sci-fi, I would recommend Descender. A lot of people say Saga. I'm not into Saga that much. Saga is like, if you have a friend has some weird kinks and fetishes, maybe Saga is a good book to recommend to them, because there's like people in there with TV heads that are like screwing each other, and they have porn playing on the TV while they're screwing each. It's weird. It's a weird book to me. The premise of the book is a neat premise, and I read it for like the first 3 volumes just because the premise is about these two beings who have a kid, and they're like on the run with the kid. I liked that, and then as they started bringing in these other elements, it kind of lost me. But I will mention it if you have friends out there that are more into that kind of sci-fi. Saga's a good one. For me, I really like Descender. Descender was a really good one. And speaking of robots, I also like The Kill Lock by Livio Ramondelli. I think that's another really good indie book. So if they're into sci-fi and robots and stuff, I think Descender and Kill Lock are right up there. And then Judge Dredd. Let's talk about Judge Dredd because Caballero said it. Judge Dredd, there's some really great books for Judge Dredd. The Mega City stuff is really good. The original run of it is fantastic. And I really like the crossover they did with Batman, Judge Dredd and Batman. I would say those are pretty good starting spots. Whenever you get a chance to see a crossover from companies like Ninja Turtles and Batman, or Batman and Judge Dredd, anything like that, typically those are not bad of a place to jump in to learn more about the other character, because chances are you'll know about Batman. So hey, I want to learn about Judge Dredd too. Boom, there's a book for that. Batman vs. Predator. I can read Batman and I can learn more about the Predators, how they operate and stuff through that. So to me, I always liked Terminator versus RoboCop. I've always kind of liked those kind of stories, because it's like, oh, I like one of these things and I want to get to know more about the other one. So let's read this book that puts them both in there. So yeah, I would recommend those. And if you're a Judge Dredd fan, if you like the Carl Urban movie, I would recommend checking out the Mega City stuff, because I think that came out around the time of that movie, and it's pretty solid. Batman Killing Joke. Yeah, we're going to jump into DC here in a second. Let me just catch up on comments. Good point. Hey, C, can I get back to Ninja Turtles? Yeah, we're in the indie section. Go ahead, man. Feel free. I'll have to check out the crossover for Judge Dredd. I think you might like it. I think you can check on Comixology right now. If you buy digital, you probably can get it for pretty cheap. I think DC's having a big sale right now. And I think I saw the Batman. I know I saw the Batman Shadow crossover, which that's another good one. You should check that one out. Which Batman did with Dynamite. I think there's a Batman Green Hornet crossover that was pretty good. And Batman Judge Dredd. And there's also, like I said, Batman Aliens, Batman Predator, Superman Aliens, Superman, Predator, I guess. They have all that stuff there too. But I liked the Batman Spawn crossovers, although I like the Batman Judge Dredd one, I think, more. And yeah, if you have something to say about Ninja Turtles, go ahead. I'm going to take a quick drink. I know I don't like to drink on stream, but it's late and I'm tired, and I've been talking all day. So I'm going to get a quick swig of some green tea with ginseng. I love the Ninja Turtles. And Judge Dredd, I don't know a ton about him, but I remember when the Carl Urban movie came out, I did pick up some books at Comic-Con, and I want to say they were the Mega City stuff, because I think that's what it was called, because I know Mega City is the name of the city he operates out of, Mega City 1, but I think there was I thought it was it felt like a prequel comic almost. It felt like a beginning of Judge Dredd's story, because he had a little bit more personality in it, and he wasn't as hard-edged, but he gets harder-edged as the story went on. I think that's what it was, but maybe someone can correct me either here or later. But yeah, it was some good stuff. And so go ahead, Drake. I don't know if there's a delay in the chat or something, but go ahead and jump in with your Ninja Turtle stuff, and I'm going to move on to DC, because I do want to try to wrap this episode up in the next 20 minutes or so. So DC Comics. DC is a bigger playground for me. Oh, wait, hold on, we got some comments. This is a little embarrassing for me to share, but I know you're not a therapist, but I would want to make an R-rated style Ninja Turtle cartoon on MTV as a way to cope with my daddy issues. That's interesting idea. You're sharing a lot there, but okay. I mean, well, you know what? The one thing I will say, don't feel bad about that either. I mean, it's great that you're honest about it. Um, Most people who do creative things are pulling from some kind of personal pain, or like I mentioned the crow earlier. So I can imagine, like I can't remember, unfortunately, growing up like to this degree what you're talking about, but I know my dad, like he used to hit me and my mom. So I'm sure that caused some kind of, I guess, like deeper interest in having a creative outlet, a place where I felt like I was in control, something like something fictional, something, where I can dictate who gets hurt, who doesn't get hurt. So I'm sure it all stems to things like that. But to me, I don't think anything's wrong with a person if they take a real life pain, because we all go through them, and they find a creative outlet to get that energy out, so that they're, so that they're kind of free of that pain. And I think writing and creating is a good outlet for a lot of comedians. Some of them have like really messed up childhoods, and they'll tell you about it if you meet them behind the scenes and talk to them, and get them to open up. But a lot of times, I would say don't try to do that, because most people want to not think about the bad things. But some of them will open up when they do like a Joe Rogan show, or they go on someone else's podcast or something, or do their own podcast. Like they'll tell you about things that happen to them, and they say that comedy was their outlet for the pain. So even though it didn't completely take away the pain, it let them get that energy, that negative part of it, out into the world as something positive. So your idea for an R-rated Ninja Turtle cartoon is a great way to get any kind of feeling out there. Just try not to let it be obvious, I would say. That's kind of my thing, is like I did, my first book was Rhino, and I feel like that's very much me dealing with, because I wrote that pre-aneurysm. So I'm sure that was me dealing with that kind of anger towards my dad. But once I finished the book, I got it out of my way. And most stories I write now, I actually write about loving fathers. Sometimes, sometimes I, write about bad guys who are dads too. But I go where the story goes, and I don't really think about the issues anymore. So I would say, just try to find a way to get it out there in a positive way, without seeming like you're preaching that's what you're doing, but still getting that energy out there. And I think you'll do just fine. That's a great way. So I think you're on a good path. And again, like you said, I'm not a therapist, but I think that's a constructive and good way to deal with something like that. Rockefeller, what's up? What's up, Seek? I usually don't really expand my horizon to comics, but I've been recently getting into the Transformers cartoons. Any TF comic recommendations? Yes. I'm not going to go back down and grab it, but there's a Transformer comic called Autocracy. And I think there was 2 sequels, Monstrosity and Supremacy or something. I can't remember what the third one's called. But start with Autocracy. Transformers Autocracy, Autocracy, Autocracy. It's like a newer origin for the Transformers, but without like spoon feeding you. Like I feel like I did like the newer Transformer books that were coming out recently that were like more political and stuff. But I felt like over time it was spoon feeding so much that I'm looking at like 25 issues of comics, and I'm like, wow, this is way too long to build up to something. Like I feel like there should have been more bigger moments in the first 24 issues than to wait for that. So I started getting bored of it. And then when I got to issue 25 and read that little crossover, or started reading Escape and all that, I lost interest, and I totally backed out of Transformers. But the Transformers spin-off book that came out of the new one, that one is really good. And Transformers Autocracy. So if you just want one trade to read right now, pick that one up. And then maybe after that, see if you can track down Monstrosity and the other sequels. Primacy is the name of the third one. See if you can find that trilogy, Autocracy, Monstrosity, and Primacy. I think that's what it is. Those 3 books by Alivio Ramondelli and Flint Dille and Chris Metzen. Flint Dille wrote on the original Transformers cartoon. So he's great. And Chris Metzen is a writer did a lot of Overwatch stuff and stuff for Blizzard. So really great writing team, and Alivio Ramondelli artwork is amazing. So I would say pick those up. And when you finish those, read All Hail Megatron. And I don't want to say anything about that story, but trust me, read that. And I promise you'll love it. So read those 3 to get your origin out of the way, and then read All Hail Megatron. That's my recommendation for Transformers. What's up, Andrew? How's it going? As an update, my eyes are healed, but I have to schedule an appointment with a retina specialist. Hey, good luck. Everyone send Andrew some good luck. Give him some heart emojis, something down there, thumbs up, whatever you want to do to support him. Good luck with the eye stuff, man. I really hope everything works out. I'm glad that they're healing. That's really good. And hopefully you get the specialist gives you the clear and okay with everything. So thank you for being here, man. And you're welcome for the transfer recommendations. Very much so. Yeah, please read those books. All right. So I can't remember what I was talking about before Transformers. I think I was going to dive into DC. But no, yeah, do the R-rated thing. I think with the if you have an idea for it, I say go for it, man. And if you ever see, and for indie stuff, before I go on to DC, if you want to find, so I used to make indie comics, and I think a lot of things people ignore when they go to conventions is Artist Alley. Artist Alley and Small Press, those are two sections at Comic-Cons all over the US and world that sometimes get ignored by the average person. Like the average person that goes to Comic-Con, they're going to try to stand in line for Hall H, they're going to look for celebrities, they're going to go do things like that, or maybe do some things outside or whatever, or do business meetings sometimes if you go there for that, like I do, or video games, whatever. But two places that get ignored or walked by a lot is Small Press and Artist Alley. If you walk down any of those sections, like look for them on the map. Like most conventions will give you a little map or a guidebook or something when you walk in. If they hand you a bag, chances are the guidebook and map are in the bag. Look for Artist Alley and Small Press and walk down those aisles. And if any piece of art or comic or something jumps out at you, go over and talk to those people. Those are people that's me. I used to do that for years. And I probably still will do that coming up after Neverland comes out and a couple other things I'm working on. So I'll probably start doing that again in 2022. And I'll vlog it. I'll show you guys what it's like to be in Artist Alley and try to get your books out there. But it's a bunch of people that are using their own money to fund their dream and passion project. So when you go down that aisle and you see them, they will, if you go up to them and say, hey, this looks neat, can you tell me about your book? You'll make their whole day, I promise you. And they'll be like, yes, like, so my book's about this. Or if you just see a piece of art and you're like, hey, I really like that piece of art. Or I like your art style. Have you drawn like a Batman or a Predator? They might have a portfolio in front of you, find a Batman print, pull it out. And you're like, I would love to have that on my wall. Like, $10, whatever the print is, $20. And you get a piece of artwork to hang up in your house. Like, trust me, as someone who's done that for, like 10 years down in Artist Alley, like at various conventions, Comic-Cons, New York Comic-Cons, San Diego's, Mega-Cons, Wizard Worlds, like, different like events in Vegas and stuff. Like, trust me, you'll make someone's day. And if you want to find good indie books or something new that maybe other people aren't talking about, you want to help spread the word on it, go down those sections and make a friend, get their business card, get their comic. And if you post like a review on it on Instagram, or you make a YouTube video about and review it, send them an email from their business card and say, hey, I did this to help try to get your book out there. And you'll make some friends, and you might even start networking and one day end up making a comic and with that person. You never know. So there's so many avenues, but being encouraging and finding things you like and being honest, like, hey, I really like this and I want to tell people about it. That's the best way to help indie books get life and get out there to more people. No matter how small you think your reach is, it's always good to do something like that. So, like, for example, like I really believe in my friend Jared Bankins, who was in the first Venom movie. We became friends with him, and he's kept in touch with me over the time, asked how my health is, how I'm doing. He checks in with me a lot. He's just a nice guy. And so I was like, all right, well, you know what? He's got a new movie coming up. I want to check it out. I watched it. I was going to watch it again tonight, but I'm going to wait till tomorrow night and watch it. And I'm going to post my review on Tuesday. I'm not seeing a lot of reviews go up about this movie. I know I won't get probably a lot of views on my video for it, but I still want to do it because his performance in that movie is genuinely fucking awesome. And the movie is really, really good. For an indie film with their budget and their limitations, they wrote a story for their limitations and for their budget. And I don't always see indie films do that. I see a lot of times people think they're making a bigger movie than they actually are, and everything looks bad, and it's not written for the environment that they're in and for the actors' abilities that they have. And this, Jared goes way above and beyond. He gives an amazing performance in this. So I can't wait to talk about that and share that review with you guys. The IDW, hey, Sunfade, what's up? Transformers IDW collection any good? Yes, but if you're going to start collecting those, the hardcovers, oh man, it's going to get expensive. It's going to get really, really expensive. So I would say if you just want to sample them and see how they're doing, get Autocracy, Monstrosity, and Primacy, the trilogy. You can get those in one single hardcover, I think, called the Autocracy trilogy or something like that. I think it's like $50, or you can probably get it for like 30 on Amazon. Pick that up. It has all three soft covers in that one hardcover. Pick that up and then find a copy of All Hail Megatron. I think that's in one hardcover or two soft covers, All Hail Megatron, or maybe three soft covers. Read those, and if you love that, then you can dive right into the whatchamacallit, Transformers IDW collections. Yeah, if you add them all up, yeah, you're spending like $1,000. So I think maybe volume 1, check online. I think volume 1 of the IDW collection, for phase 1 or whatever it was called, I think that one has All Hail Megatron in it. So if you can find that for a good price, maybe it's just cheaper or the same to just get that. But don't quote me on that. I don't remember what's in that first volume hardcover, but I think either in the first one or second one, All Hail Megatron is in it. So, but I would say start with the Autocracy stuff and then read All Hail Megatron. And if you love all of that, go read the collections after that. All right, so I think I talked about Indy enough. Like we're going to jump back to, because we have a Batman question here. Hey, Skullman, what's up, dude? Hang on, let me get to Andrew's question real quick. Batman question, is there a comic based on the Harley Quinn show? Not that I know of right now, but not that I know of right now. I know DC likes to put out a lot of comics based in their animated universes. I don't know of one, but that doesn't mean one doesn't exist. I just don't know of one. So I can't answer that question. But I know there are a lot of Harley Quinn books out right now, and a couple new ones coming out this summer, like in August. So feel free to look online and check. I think you go to DC Connect or something like that. Google that, DC Connect magazine or something. It's an online free magazine that tells you all the new DC books that are coming out for like the next 2 months. Check that. I think you'll see some Harley Quinn stuff in there. That's the best answer I can give. I'm sorry. I'm not a big Harley Quinn fan, so I don't know. I'm sorry to say. But if you like Harley Quinn, in August, there's going to be a bunch of trade paperbacks for the Suicide Squad coming out, and some of them have Harley in them, so those are also fun to read as well. Skullman says, Seek NR, nice name change. Personally, I've always had a soft spot for anything Frank Miller, i.e. The Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil Born Again. So there you go. Skullman just echoed what I said earlier. I recommended when we were doing the Marvel section for Daredevil Born Again and Daredevil Man Without Fear, which was also written by Frank Miller. So please go check those out. And then, yes, now we're going to dive into DC, and this is going to be, we'll wrap up the episode with DC. But speaking of Frank Miller, I do have, sometimes you have people that go like, hey, I want to read comic books. And again, this is just stuff I personally recommend, but only after I ask them questions. So I'll be like, hey, out of the superhero movies you've seen, who do you have an interest in? If they say, I like X-Men, I recommend the stuff I mentioned earlier. If they say Batman, I go, okay, let's check out some Batman stuff. And I'm a big Frank Miller fan too. Dark Knight Returns, I don't always recommend to people as their first Batman story. I agree it's a great Batman story, but to me it's a lot like Kraven's Last Hunt. I never recommend that as the first Batman book for someone to read. Although I think it's great and I think you can jump in and read it, I still feel like there's other things that kind of can help broaden your horizon or at least be a better entry point for Batman than Dark Knight Returns. But I still would recommend it. It just wouldn't be in my first, second, or third recommendations. It'd probably be like a fifth or sixth recommendation. So I usually will say like, okay, you like Batman. Do you want a more of an action comic with a lot of villains? Do you like his supervillains too, his rogues gallery? Or do you want something more personal and more, detective-like? And if they say the detective, more personal stuff, I'll usually either recommend Batman Night Cries, which we did an episode on not too long ago, maybe like 6 months ago or something. That's a great standalone Batman story where Commissioner Gordon or Captain Gordon is becoming commissioner in that book. And it's about his first case that now that he's commissioner, it's the first serial killer case with him as the commissioner. And then you have Batman helping him out on it. So it's kind of one of their first major times working together with him as commissioner and Batman as being Batman. So I usually recommend Night Cries or obviously Batman Year One. by Frank Miller. This book is freaking awesome. The animated movie is a really good adaptation of this. David Mazzucchelli's artwork, who also was the artist on Daredevil Born Again. So if you end up reading Batman Year One and you really like the writing and art on this, pick up Born Again by with Daredevil, because that's Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli also. Amazing stuff. And Richard Lewis in the book as well as with art and I think colors, amazing stuff. But this is essentially the new origin of Batman post Crisis on Infinite Earths. And if you talk to pretty much anyone who works in comics, they'll kind of say this is almost the definitive Batman origin. This just covers the moment he lands back in Gotham and then proceeds to put on the black costume and then eventually upgrade to the Bat costume. That's what this is. So you're not going to see him training around the world with monks or Ra's al Ghul or League of Assassins or League of Shadows or Lady Shiva or none of that. You're not going to get any of that in here. This is the moment he comes back to Gotham. And I love it because he comes back to Gotham by plane. And he says, it's good to come in by plane. I can see the city. It's so gross from up here. I'm here to clean it up. And then you cut to Commissioner Gordon, who's taken a train from Chicago, moving to Gotham. And he's like, it's good that I took the train. I'm down here on the street level. I can see how dirty it is. And I'm here to clean it up. And you got these two men that are coming back into town on the same day, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, I really like this. So Year One is good. Night Cries is good. And if they say, you know what, I like Batman. I already kind of know who he is. I know about, there was a Robin that died. I know that, his parents died. I already know all that stuff. I just want to see him fight the Joker and the Riddler and Poison Ivy and maybe even Superman or whatever. Then obviously you can't get better than Batman Hush. Now, I personally don't think this has a great ending. Batman Hush, I felt like the last issue was a little meh to me. Although it was cool to see Harold again. I really like Harold. But this book is, I know it's a generic answer to some people, but there's a reason why this book gets recommended a lot to new readers who are interested in Batman. It's an entry-level book. Again, sometimes you recommend things that you don't think are the best stories. I like Hush a lot, but it's not my favorite Batman story. I don't even know if it's in my top 10 anymore, but it is still one that I feel like is a good entry point. If you hand this to someone, they will not be lost. There's not a ton of past continuity they need to know about. And when they get to the point where, Batman is beating the crap out of the Joker because he killed Jason, they explain that that's why he's beating the crap out of the Joker. So even a new reader would go, oh, shoot, Joker shot Batgirl and paralyzed her and killed a Robin. And instantly you already feel Batman's pain. So even a new reader, I still feel like can be on board with this run. And then they get introduced to a new villain at the same time. So yeah, I think Batman Hush is a really, really good entry point. I like Dark Knight Returns universe. Not the biggest fan of Frank Miller. His Superman Year One was terrible. Yeah, Caleb, I got that for my birthday, actually, the Superman Year One, because I read the first issue and I did a review of it. And I kind of liked what Frank was doing a little bit. So I was like, okay, and it's John Romita Jr. drawing it. So that's the Daredevil Man Without Fear team reuniting. So I kind of got in a little bit into the first issue, but I got the hardcover for my birthday, and it came in early, like 2 weeks before my birthday. And I started to read the second issue, and I was really losing interest with him underwater, and like he wants to date this princess underwater, but her dad is the king of. He's a King Poseidon or something, but he wants to marry his daughter because his wife died and she's next in line to be queen because she's the daughter. So he wants to marry. It's so gross. I'm like, Frank, what are you doing, buddy? Like, what are you doing? Like, I know you're trying to paint that maybe, Atlantis is a different culture than land, some people on land at least, or most people on land, I should say. But it still gave me the heebie-jeebies. So I kind of stopped reading it. I was like, I'm good. I'm out, Frank. But I did like Dark Knight 3, The Master Race. I did like that. I thought that was pretty good. But Brian Azzarello co-wrote it, so I think that's probably why. Frank Miller, my feelings on him are complex, but I love Dark Knight Returns. RoboCop vs. Terminator, we mentioned earlier. That's a good one. And a couple of his other books of the era. Yeah, I do too. I mean, you can't deny that guy wrote some of the best stuff in comic book history. I never was a big fan of his art, but I always did appreciate it for what it is and the style that it was. Like when he did Sin City, I think his art style is fantastic for that. And 300 works for that too. Superheroes, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. He's getting older now, so I know he still tries to draw from time to time, but it's hard when you're an old guy and you're trying to keep your hand steady and you're drawing. It's not easy. So when people shit all over his artwork, when Dark Knight 3 came out, you had Andy Kubert drawing the main book. I think it was Andy. Yeah, I think it was Andy. It wasn't Adam, I don't think. But anyway, you had one of the Kubert brothers drawing the main book, and then Frank drew the backup mini comics, and people were shitting all over it. I'm like, dude, the guy's like 60 plus years old, and the fact that he can draw at that age, like, give the guy some credit, man. He's a legend. Like, you gotta have some respect, you know. But I agree. It doesn't mean I always like his stuff. I just cut him a little slack when it comes to drawing, because I can keep my hand pretty still sometimes, and I can't do even I can't even touch Frank Miller's art. So, you know, get even near how good it is, even when he's bad. So I who am I to judge? Skullman says, "Seek, believe it or not, as big of a Frank Miller fan I am, I never read Batman Year One. Now I just didn't it also inspire Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins? It inspired some of Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, because Batman Begins has Bruce coming back to Gotham, but it also tells you all the stuff of him, of why he left, how he left, his thing with Rachel, which she was a made-up character for the movie, and then training with the League of Assassins and coming back. None of that is in Year One. Year One is literally just about the moment, the day that Bruce Wayne and Gordon arrive in Gotham. And I know some people will say, well, that's a big coincidence. There we go. Sorry, I had a little bug there. In what was I saying? In the Batman Begins, in the comic Year One, no, they did not. Gordon and Batman did not end up in Gotham at the same time. They did the second time Bruce is in Gotham, but the book actually has Bruce coming to Gotham a couple days earlier in a costume, and taking down a drug lord or crime lord, and then secretly getting out of Gotham and then flying into Gotham. So that way people won't think that Bruce coming to Gotham and all of a sudden a superhero arrived are the same. Like, he just did everything he could to misdirect people. So he came into Gotham early and then smuggled himself out and flew back into Gotham the same day Gordon got there. So it was not that much of a coincidence, but I like that. I thought that was really cool. Andrew says, but I love Dark Trinity with Jason Todd, Bizarro, and I forget her name too. Yes, I know what you're talking about. Amazon lady with a big axe, but I fell in love with how they handled Bizarro, essentially someone who has special needs. Yes, so Bizarro, if you really like that version of Bizarro, you should read Forever Evil. That kind of set up that version of Bizarro, where Lex Luthor was trying to make a clone of Superman, but he had to release the clone before the cloning process was finished, because a bunch of supervillains from another universe, the crime syndicate, showed up in the New 52 world and beat all the superheroes. So Lex Luthor was like, all right, well, we're going to need strong people to fight against these guys who took down the Justice League. So he's like, well, luckily I've been making that Superman clone, but it's not finished, but I got to release it anyway. He releases it, and it is, like you said, it's kind of like equivalent almost of special needs, where it kind of has to be nurtured and kind of, led around to an extent, and, noise makes him cover his ears and things like that. And so Lex for a second is like, I got to kill this thing. It's useless. Like, it's not going to do anything. But then a part of Lex is like, I think gives Bizarro a chance. So I really love Lex and Bizarro's relationship in Forever Evil. Actually, I don't really like Forever Evil that much, even though I love the Crime Syndicate. But that relationship I thought was really well done by Jeff Johns. And that then leads into what you're talking about, Dark Trinity, the Red Hood book, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Dark Trinity. That, you're right. All the stuff they do with Bizarro in that book is awesome. And I like that Jason also feels a kinship to Bizarro, because he's like a living weapon that, some people don't want to keep around. And Jason feels that way about himself sometimes. And Artemis is the girl's name, I think. So hopefully the chat's working again, so you guys can probably chat again. Thank you for the 4 thumbs up, by the way. So speaking of the Justice League and New 52, if anyone asks, okay, well, I want to know about the Justice League. There's so many good Justice League stories that I would rather recommend. The Brad Meltzer run of Justice League, I really like how that started off. The Grant Morrison run of Justice League, which pretty much just starts off with Electric Superman. I think it has regular Superman for 4 issues, and then he becomes electric for a while. So I know that'll throw people off, but I still think that's a much better book. Um, and there's so many other great runs. I really like the original Brave and the Bold stuff that led into Justice League, or actually that led into Outsiders. So yeah, I can't remember. I'm like blanking, but there's a lot of other runs and points in the Justice League comic book that I would rather recommend. But again, I to put that aside and put my personal feelings aside and understand that the person asking for a recommendation wants something that is not bogged down with continuity, not overwhelming, not too many characters, just a good entry point. Honest, I mean, it's pretty obvious you're going to go with Justice League Origin. Again, I like Jeff Johns. I don't think this is a very well done graphic novel, in my opinion, from a writing standpoint. I think it's a great entry level one, and I think that was Jeff's goal was, hey, let's write kind of like a Hush story, something that has a big villain in it, Darkseid, which to me, Darkseid is not the Justice League's number one nemesis, in my opinion. But that's kind of the route they went in with the comics over the years. But so the Justice League, it's them forming. I personally like the original team where it doesn't have Superman or Batman on it, and it's like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, and they're fighting Starro, and they have the Flash on the team and stuff. I much prefer that version. I think that's a great entry point, is to learn about the characters that aren't Batman and Superman. But for someone who's new, they're going to want some familiarity, and so having Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman in this is good. This is pretty much the team that's in the movie, the Justice League movie that came out. Like this is where they add Cyborg. Cyborg was a member of the Justice League before the New 52, but then he was quickly taken off the team, but James Robinson put him on the team. And even Brad Meltzer at one point flirted with putting Cyborg on the team. And they never really, DC could never commit to that for some reason. So when they relaunched the universe, they added Cyborg, and they made him come from a mother box. They changed his origin. They tied him to Apocalypse and Darkseid. So this is pretty much where that story comes from. So like with the Zack Snyder Justice League movie, comes from all this, because it has pretty much all these members in the movie minus Green Lantern. So I say that's a good entry point, though. Again, I don't think it's the best story for Justice League, but I think it's a good entry level one. And then last, I'll mention here, and then I'll get to more comments too. Superman. Superman is all over the place. Like so to give Jeff some credit, because I kind of dissed that one a little bit, that Justice League book, but I still feel like it has a purpose. So even though I don't like the story overall, it still has a purpose of recommending to somebody as an entry level book. Superman, Jeff did a book called Superman Secret Origin. I do like Secret Origin. I think it's a really well told Superman story. But before that, I would probably recommend Superman Birthright. I'm sorry, Superman Birthright. Superman Birthright to me is a great Superman story. I really love that one. I also like Superman Secret Identity, which is not an in-continuity Superman story. Neither is Birthright, but they're just interesting takes on Superman, I feel. And I love Superman for All Seasons by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, who did Long Halloween and Spider-Man Blue, which we mentioned earlier and stuff. So I those are things I normally recommend to people for Superman. But if they want something a little bit more modern, something that's happening or happened in the past like 5 or 10 years, it doesn't get any better than Superman Rebirth. This book, actually, before you read this, read a book called I think it's called Lois and Clark, and it's like 8 issues by Dan Jurgens and Lee Weeks, I think. That book kind of sets this up. Basically, the New 52 had its own version of Superman that most fans didn't like, myself included. I thought this Superman was kind of a shit. Like he didn't do anything that was, I don't know, I didn't like him. Even when Grant Morrison wrote him, I didn't like him. I was like, I don't like this kid. He's a younger, brasher, more modern, millennial, douchey Superman kind of. And not that he didn't do things that were Superman-esque. His attitude I didn't like. And that's DC's problem. They're always trying to reinvent Superman, and sometimes just doing classic Superman is what works for Superman. That's just how it is. It's how people know him. He's the pinnacle of superheroes. He's the first. So there's a high bar there. So you can try new things with Superman. You can Man of Steel him, make him a little edgier, darker. You can do this where you kind of give him more of an attitude. But those versions don't survive. I'm sorry. It's good to do them because that helps remind people the version they actually do like. And I'm not saying, and it's funny because people say, oh, you're in the minority. I'm like, I'm not saying you got to make him as goofy as Christopher Reeve. I'm just saying he doesn't have to be a shithead, and he doesn't have to be, like the Zack Snyder version either. Which I don't dislike the Zack Snyder version completely. I feel like there's a better middle ground between Christopher Reeve and Zack Snyder's version. I feel like there's a better middle ground. I think Superman and Lois, the show, does pretty close to that middle ground, I feel, but this comic really does it. Superman, New 52 Superman did not last long because people didn't like him, so they killed him. And what they did was they brought Superman from the pre-New 52 universe. So this is the Superman that got killed by Doomsday in the 90s. They brought him back. He's married to Lois, and they have a 10-year-old son named Jonathan Kent, who's starting to develop superpowers. So now you have a world where Superman and Batman have 10-year-old kids, and those two kids become friends, and they team up in a great book called The Super Sons, which I also recommend, but I recommend reading this first. I have the entire run. It's by Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. I have all 4 volumes in hardcover. These are fantastic. This is some of the best Superman stories I've read in forever. And if you guys probably don't remember, about 2 years ago, I did a Superman podcast on Patreon, and I still saved those episodes because my plan is to maybe one day still finish them and finish that series and upload them to here and charge like a membership price of like $1 or $2 a month to listen to them. So I may still record those at some point in the future. But my plan was to end the series of those podcasts with this run and go through this whole run issue by issue. And I love it. It's that good. There's nothing more interesting to me than doing new things with characters. What I like about Superman in this being a husband and a father is that we've seen that before. Like Superman Returns, he had a kid in that. There was a book that Jeff Johns once did called called Up, Up and Away, I think. And Superman, soon after, had a son, but it wasn't his kid. It was Zod's kid. That was the twist in it. But Superman still said he was going to adopt him. Him and Lois were going to adopt him. None of those really panned out. But seeing Clark as a father, I love it. I think it's great because in the TV show, Superman and Lois, he's not a very good father. And that's crazy to think about because he had 2 of the best fathers, Alfred was a great father figure to Bruce. But Clark had the wisdom, I guess, and direction from his father, Jor-El, through the crystals at the Fortress of Solitude. But he had Pa Kent, who's one of the most honest and hardworking human beings, like in the world of comic book fiction. He's like an Uncle Ben type. Like he's old school. He fought in the war. He fought for his country. He's very honest with people. Like he shakes people's hands and looks them in the eye. When he says he gives his word, he means it. Like he's that kind of guy. So you had that kind of guy and Ma Kent, who is also just equally as awesome as Pa Kent, raising Clark in a great environment around, small town people with small town values, and then him getting this direction by this alien father of his from another world. You would think he would grow up to be a great dad, and he struggles with it. It's new to him. It's tough. It's tough being a father, even for Superman. I think it's the most human Superman has ever been written in a long time, and all they had to do was just give him a son, and that was it. That's all they had to do to humanize Superman, and make him have differences with Lois, because marriages are work. Marriages don't just mean you're in love every single day and you have no problems. Sometimes you still struggle and you will disagree and you will fight. But if love is strong enough, you will obviously stay together. So that's the journey of Superman and Rebirth. So I personally, if you already know Superman, planet blew up, if you know the basics of Superman, you can jump right into this and read it. But I would recommend reading the Superman and the Clark and Lois miniseries first, and then jump into this. Darkseid to me, Andrew says, is overused. Starro to me is a good jobber villain, someone who can be a threat or a joke depending on what is needed. It's also a character that has that sort of feel to him. I love Starro. Yeah, I agree with you on all that. Andrew says, my favorite Superman. Thank you guys for the 7 thumbs up, by the way. Thank you for that. My favorite Superman stories lately have been more his humanity and him trying to be a father, because Superman is effectively a god, so it can get boring showing him dragging planets around. My thing with Superman, and the thing I not to overly criticize Zack Snyder, because I know he has his fan base and there's a lot of people out there that really love his take on these characters, and that's great. Like I always say, if we just had one version of Superman forever, we would all have stopped reading him a long time ago. So we need people like Zack and other people to come in and do something different or take a risk with the character. And whether that risk pans out or not, we need those risks to be taken, because then that puts into perspective what people who don't like the risk, what they actually like about the character. And it's a great way to self-examine yourself and figure out what makes Superman to you. And what makes Superman to me is doesn't mean what the Zack Snyder means to somebody else. It doesn't make that any less important. So that's what I hate when people get into these fights about that. Like, if I criticize Zack, people just go, "Oh, you want a goody two-shoes Superman who just never does anything wrong," and blah blah. And I'm like, why are you projecting all of that onto me? That is not it at all. Like we just said here, we like the humanity in a guy like that. I think Zack, when he talks about Superman, he always mentions Superman's power, that he's a god. He mentions things like that. What's it like to be around normal people, all the stuff like that. He mentions these things, but I don't see Superman that way. To me, most of us, it's very human nature to be a product of your environment. If you come from another country and you grow up here, you will be more like the surroundings you had here and more accustomed to the things you learn from people's behaviors here. And if you go back to the country you came from or whatever, you might feel like a fish out of water, because you're like, oh, the customs are different. The way people talk and treat each other might be different than what I learned over in America, and then vice versa. If you grew up here and moved like we did when I was a kid, and we moved to Athens, Greece, and that's where my brother was born, and then he had to come to the States and get that fish out of water feeling and stuff. So to me, Superman is a product of his environment. I like talking about the Kryptonian side of Superman because it's certainly part of his birth, his origin, but his upbringing and his values come from Ma and Pa Kent and living in Smallville, Kansas. That is what raised him. So his idea of truth and justice and the American way, and his saving people, and the feeling to the need to want to help people with his powers, that doesn't come from Jor-El. So when the movie says you're going to go to Earth and do these great things and lead them and all this stuff, no, that's not. He's not some chosen one that's coming here to do that. He gets sent here, and luckily, for all of our sakes, he lands in the middle of a farm by two people who are unable to naturally have a child of their own. And they raise him because they think is a gift, because they aren't able to have children. So they're like, we can raise this kid as our own. It's like an adoption story. And we're going to raise him and teach him and give our wisdom onto him, or bring our wisdom to him and show him what the world is like. And we're going to protect him. We're going to hide his ship, and we're going to treat him and raise him as a human, as one of us, even if he turns out to be different. But he grows up, even though he has differences, he has his powers and stuff, but he grew up with the mentality of humans. So to me, when I talk about Superman, I don't like to talk about his power. Of course he's powerful. He's the most powerful guy in comic books, but especially superhero wise. But that's not Superman to me. Superman to me is the humanity part. He is more human than most of us, and he's from another planet. I think that's a great allegory for someone who comes in from another country and comes to America and makes America their home, even though they weren't born here, and they become the best example of what an American citizen can be. That to me is Superman. And that's what Schuster and Siegel always saw him as, because they were Jewish immigrants who came to America, and that projected from them onto the story. So that's what Superman is to me. It's about being a product of your environment, learning humanity through the kindness of others, and using that to steer you to do good things in the world, despite the increase of bad things happening all the time. So that's where, I would love to one day talk to someone like a Zack Snyder who just has that difference of an opinion on Superman, because I think that would just be a great conversation between two people. But I'm sure Zack has had plenty of those conversations when he was making those movies, because I'm sure he had a lot of people going, no, you got to do this with Superman, you got to do this. I'm not one of those types that says you got to do anything with Superman or any fictional character. I say do whatever makes sense for you. If you're the one in the writing seat and the directing seat, it's your baby. You got to bring your style to these characters. But at the end of the day, understand that you don't own these characters. They aren't yours. They belong to a company and to the fandom in a sense. You got to just put your stamp on it. You have fun while in the time you have that character, and then you got to let it go. And some days I wish Zach would just kind of let it go. I think he was wronged in a lot of stuff that was going on with him and making those movies. 100% he was wronged. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, you got 3 movies that you got to do mostly what you wanted to do on. That's such a great victory. To want more is gluttony a little bit. And so, yeah, that's just how I feel about it. But I still am glad he did his versions, and I'm glad his fans have something, like they have a version of Superman that they like. And at the end of the day, that's all we need as fans. And that's why I did this episode and wanted to talk about what you recommend to somebody. It's like, hey, that's why I recommend things sometimes that I don't think are even the best stories of those characters. I just think they're a good jump on point. And then you have to trust that, hey, I'm giving you this Superman book. You got to hope that if they read it, they see the same thing in it that you do, or they at least see a fraction of what you see. And they go, you know what, this is good enough to continue. And then they pick up the next book, and then they meet a character like Hal Jordan, who's in volume 2. And they go, I kind of like that Hal Jordan guy in that story with Parallax that he did with Superman. Maybe I'll go check out a Hal Jordan comic now. And then, oh, wow, I like Hal Jordan, but then John Stewart showed up and Guy Gardner, and I like them way more than Hal Jordan. So now I'll branch off that way. And essentially, when you hand someone a movie, a comic, a song, whatever you're recommending to them, you're essentially handing them the first domino. And you've already set up, or all the other dominoes have been pre-set up by fate. And you're handing the first domino. And then when they're done with it, they drop it and it knocks over the next domino. And they'll pick it up from there. And then if they like that, they'll put it down, it'll fall over, and it'll lead to more dominoes. And eventually one will knock 2 over, and they'll pick up 2 dominoes, and then 2 more, and it spreads like that. So to me, that's what this is. It's learn to recommend things that you don't see eye to eye with, like Saga for me, but I still would recommend it to somebody who I think it would be good for. And always ask questions. Ask what your friend or the person who's looking for recommendations, ask what they like in storytelling. Like, do you like character? Do you like art? Do you like, what do you like? What is making you interested in comics? And what kind of stories do you normally ingest? And let's start there and see if those dominoes continue to fall and you become a long-term fan. But you got to let them kind of find their own way after you give them your initial suggestions. You got to kind of let them find their own way, unless they come back to you and ask for more help. Caleb says, what would you recommend for someone who hasn't read much comics? The comics I've read are Superman Year One, Batman Year One, and JL Origin. I was super confused. The suits were different. Yeah, that's true. I've watched a ton of DC TV shows and movies, just haven't got around to the comics. I've seen some Superman and Batman movies, didn't really get into DC until CW's Arrow. You know what? Green Arrow is a character I really, really love. If you want to check out Green Arrow, I highly recommend the Mike Grell Green Arrow. I think it's called Longbow Hunters, and then there was some stuff after that are really good. They've recollected those in trade paperbacks recently. So Mike Grell, that's a more of an 80s Green Arrow comic, but it's one where, much like the TV show, and that's what I always said about guys like Hawkeye and Green Arrow, they have a bow and arrow. He should shoot people with an arrow. Like, an arrow should go into somebody's arm or heart or neck. Like, why carry a bow and arrow and put like a boxing glove in it? I'm not a big fan of that. It's fun and gimmicky, and it works for like a comic book if you're going for kind of tongue-in-cheek and stuff and kind of having fun with it. Or if you use it as a joke in the comic, because they've done that before, where he's shooting arrows into people, but then he shoots the boxing glove one, and they're like, what the hell's that? And he's like, something I'm trying out. They're like, don't do that again. He's like, oh, yeah, okay, it didn't work, because it's just a boxing glove. It's not like there's a brick in it or anything. So to me, the Mike Grell stuff is a lot like the TV show in some regards. But I actually really like the Jeff Lemire Green Arrow run from New 52. If you get a chance, it's a younger Oliver Queen, but that Jeff Lemire chunk is fantastic. I actually really like that run. And then after that, read the current Benjamin Percy stuff I really liked. And if you want to see a very different, older take on Oliver Queen, pick up the Judd Winnick Green Arrow run from 1 year later, where Oliver Queen becomes the mayor of Star City. And he's a mayor during the day and superhero at night. And that's pretty fun, because he's dealing with politics. during the day, and then he goes out as a crime fighter at night, and he actually baits Deathstroke. He baits him to come and kill and assassinate Oliver Queen at like a rally, like when he's trying to get support to get voted into being mayor. And so he goes out and he's on a podium and he's like, he's kind of baiting Deathstroke to come shoot him. And then of course, he gets shot at and he runs away, and then he goes and hides and puts on his costume and then comes up and actually fights Deathstroke. And he tells him, he's like, he goes, Oliver Queen set this trap. And he goes, and I'm Oliver Queen's bodyguard now that he's mayor, and he's paying me millions of dollars to be his bodyguard. So Slade, if you ever come here again, I'm going to just put I'm going to put an arrow in your other eye. It's really fun. I think you'll like that stuff. But as far as other DC stuff, I already went through and recommended stuff. So you just skip back or watch this video after we're done with the live stream. We already went through some DC stuff, Caleb, and you'll see I recommended some of the things you've already read and some things you haven't read that we mentioned too. Didn't Crime Syndicate Ultraman basically start as Superman was raised by the mob? Yes, he's basically an alternate Superman that was raised by the mob. Yes, definitely. Caleb says, I then went back and rewatched Christopher Reeve's Superman, 90s Batman, and Nolan movies. I've watched a ton of DC cartoons. I've watched Smallville and Gotham. I just finished Gotham. I didn't really like that show too much, but I did like some parts of it. So it kept me going till the end, but I ultimately didn't like that show. But Smallville I love. And Smallville is really great because they do a lot of B and C list characters in that show as well throughout the 10 years. But check out some of the animated shows if you haven't watched. You said you watched a ton of the DC cartoons. Batman season 1, 2, and 3. Superman season 1, 2, and 3. Batman and Robin season 4, I think it is, or the New Adventures of Batman and Robin. There's only one season of that. Then jump into Batman Beyond, 3 seasons. Then Justice League, 2 seasons, and then Justice League Unlimited is 2 seasons. That is all one universe, and it's phenomenal. But if you want to dip outside and see some of the other B and C list characters, and you don't mind a little humor, I really like The Batman. It's a cartoon just called The Batman. It ran 5 seasons. The last season is basically a Brave and the Bold season. It's Batman teaming up with Green Arrow and Green Lantern. Every episode, someone different, Martian Manhunter. And that was a precursor, and the show that came after the Batman was Batman Brave and the Bold. And that one's more of a comedic take on Batman a little bit, like it's more tongue-in-cheek. But I thought the writing in that show was phenomenal. And there's actually an episode or 2 of that show that might even make you cry. It's that well done. So what was the comic that got you into comics, Tariq asks, and how do you think the new Batman movie will do? Well, I don't know if I can speculate on the new Batman movie. Like, I have mixed feelings about it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do an episode on that later on. But I already mentioned the comics that got me into stuff. So the last thing I'll mention here then to answer that question too is, so on Instagram, I know that sometimes I share about my health. The reason I do that, I think a lot of people don't understand the way I use Instagram. And I've talked about this many times. I post how I feel on Instagram, no matter what reaction it elicits out of people. The reason I do that is because now, especially with the memory loss stuff, I need now more than ever some kind of document to bring to my doctor and go, hey, on this day I felt like this, and on this day I felt like this. So that's usually what I use Instagram for. But I've seen that it's kind of turned a lot of people off. I actually lost a bunch of followers over the course of like the last year and a half. And I'm going to assume it's because of stuff like that, because I've gotten a little political here and there on social media, but only when I don't understand something. So more of my posts aren't like really picking a side. It's more like, I don't understand this. Someone please explain it to me. And then sometimes I get into get into little arguments sometimes too, like anybody does on social media. But I feel like I don't like how I've been using social media on Instagram. So as you know, I deleted Twitter and all that stuff. So I'm not the Venom vlog anymore on Instagram. Seek and Destroy. So that's the main show we do here. Outside of Venom vlog is Seek and Destroy. That's this show right now is Seek and Destroy. So Seek and Destroy is what I'm at on Instagram now. That's my original account, but I'm not taking any more friend requests on that account. I'm not going to add any more people on that account, and I'm going to start going through and deleting people that I don't know in real life. So I'm sorry if you're a follower of mine, and if you follow this channel, I'm going to stop following you and delete you. So please don't take that personally. the reason I'm doing that is because I created a second Instagram account called Seek NR, which is the name of my new DC show that I've been doing that we're 5 episodes into. Seek NR is going to be my new account. So it's Seek, SIIKE .EN.ARRH. And that is my new Instagram account. And on there, I will not post anything personal about my life. It is not going to be a private account. It's wide open. Comments on all the posts are wide open. And then twice a month, we're going to do live discussions on there where I'm going to read some comments from some previous posts, and I'll answer them or talk about them more in a stories video. So I'm going to actually have that as a companion account to my Seek NR YouTube show, because the Seek NR show, I'll just do episodes at random. Like there's no order to it really. I just do them whenever I want. Venom Vlog, I try to have a system where I try to get a certain amount of episodes a week if I can. And then Seek and Destroy, same thing. So I want to keep those two shows going, but Seek NR, until the Venom Vlog is done, Seek NR is not going to fully take over. So until then, I want to have this Instagram account that's open. I've already have 4 posts up now. 3 of them are comic related. One of them is one of my first comics. So you'll actually see that Batman, the second appearance of Jason Todd. That was one of my first comic books, along with X-Men by Jim Lee. Well, that might have been a little bit later. But the Spider-Man, Kraven's Last Hunt, and Crisis on Infinite Earths, the issue where Flash dies, the issue where Supergirl dies. So I had like a stack of like 8 books or something, one of my first comics. So it's hard to say which one my first one was, but in that stack there was a couple of the ones I just mentioned. So you'll see stuff like that on that Instagram page, and you can just go follow it. You don't need to send me a request. You can just follow it, and chances are I'll probably follow you right back. So that's what I created, and that's going to be where I post all my DC stuff. Like I might do single issue comic reviews weekly on there, just in a post. And then for things that I think will make for better videos, then I'll make reviews of them. So yeah. But the new Batman movie, I hope for the best, but I don't know. I'm kind of divided. It has nothing really to do with Robert Pattinson. I'm just a little kind of nervous about the presentation of it, I guess, and what I've heard about the story. But again, I want to wait till I see more trailers. I don't like to go off rumors and things people tell me, even if they do work at companies that make these movies. I'd rather still not take their word for it because things change all the time. So Andrew says, Batman Brave and the Bold is more lighthearted. It was not my style, but they had a hell of a sense of self-awareness. Also, Chill of the Night, just damn. That's what I meant. Chill of the Night's a really good episode. And yes, that's what makes me like Brave and the Bold is the self-awareness. They're not goofy and they don't understand. It's like not them being goofy without understanding that they're being goofy. They understand what they're doing, and it's kind of fun. Justice League Action is another one like that. That's another cartoon that's kind of like campy, and they know they're being campy. But the Batman I really liked. I thought that was a cool show, and it was a very different take on Batman and his villains. That's for sure. See, given I have to help document my sister's seizures, what do you need to do to document? For me, I just keep a journal next to my bed. It's a Venom journal. Actually, I have it right here. Boom. This was a gift from someone to me. So I usually keep a journal next to my bed. I have things on my phone. I keep notes on my phone all the time. I keep track of what I eat and what like my activities. That's why I stay home a lot. I don't go out and do things because I just one less thing to document. Because if I go out, I'm like, okay, I'm in a movie theater with roughly 40 people. Like I have to document that stuff. Because if I have an episode, or if I have an episode the next day or something, I need to be able to go back and look and see what did I do the day before that might have led to it, what kind of exhaustion or what happened. So I would say I just started documenting stuff, and I think that's why when I have like a memory gap, it's easier for me to be a little bit aware of what happened, like, or not exactly what happened, but like going, okay, wait, I wasn't doing this, because I probably took a note. I do a lot of like recording notes too on my phone. So I might be like, hey, in an hour, I might go edit or something, but let's clean first. And then I'll put a note. I have dry erase boards. I have what's that other board called? A cork board. I have a dry erase calendar. I have a whole wall of things where I make notes and stuff, and they have like rules there for like if I ever have an episode, what I got to do, control my breathing, things like that. Echo is trained if I fall. He's trained to turn my head, so I don't like swallow my tongue or even bite my tongue. I do usually have a mouth guard, but sometimes I can't always get to it in time before the seizure. I do have a helmet. Sometimes I can't always get to it in time to put it on before the seizure. But I do try to keep those things pretty central. So I spend some time in here, but I spend a lot of time sitting out in the living room. So this is my bedroom, but I turned it into my recording studio. My bed is in the living room, and I sleep out in the living room. So I try to keep things between my bed and this room. So there's a TV stand out there with my TV on it. I try to keep the helmet near that along with my mouthpiece, so that way I can get to it fast from here or get to it fast from the living room. But depending on what kind of seizure she has and stuff, I would say it's different for everyone, and obviously consult your doctor more than me. But that's just since you're asking what I typically do, that's typically what I do. And I hope for the best. Is it cool to bring up Venom stuff sometimes? Yeah, well, the Venom vlog is not leaving until the end of the year. So I plan to do the Venom vlog all the way up until when the new movie comes out. And then after that, it'll probably be 2 or 3 months before the DVD and Blu-ray come out. So we'll still be talking about Venom then. I'll need that time to wrap up any comic books we haven't done too. But my plan is whoever takes over Venom after Donny Cates, I probably won't review those. I probably won't. I'll do the Carnage event that's coming out this year, Extreme Carnage. And then we'll do any past Venom stories, and then that'll pretty much be it. We'll basically have had our whole show document from Peter Parker getting the symbiote all the way to Extreme Carnage, and I probably won't do much after that, to be honest with you. And then after the second movie comes out and the Blu-ray comes out, and we talk about the box office and all that, and we go through all that stuff. Yeah, we'll probably end the Venom vlog. I mean, I think 4 years is a good long time to have done that show and talk about one single character. But now I've been wanting to do more in the DC universe, and you guys have seen me try, and I feel like everything I've tried has just been like the Venom vlog, but just in DC, like a DC version of the Venom vlog. And I don't want to do that. I want to do different things, especially with some of my new limitations. So I like the style of filming stuff, like with these, panning shots and everything, and images of the comic folding. I've seen a couple other YouTubers do stuff like that, and I like it. And so I wanted to do my version of that. So yeah, that's that. But I will say that there is an idea I have for a show that I don't want to talk too much about right now. It will take some work to do, not a ton of work, because I'm going to do it kind of. I'm not very good with graphics and things like that, as you guys know. I make my own intros for my shows, but they're not always that good. But I do my best. But from what I've learned, I have an idea for a show that will be a little bit more of a discussion. I'll see if I can get a co-host for it. Or it might just be a parody show. So I'm thinking. But if I do the parody thing, it might have some swearing in it, and I might have to put it behind a paywall. So I might do a thing where it's a show that if you pay $2 a month, you'll get like 2 episodes a month or something, or I'll do $1 a month and you get 1 episode a month. I'll try to figure something out. That way I have because YouTube will sometimes write me. I'll get emails from YouTube going, hey, you haven't checked out the pay feature? You can come up with memberships and blah blah blah, and you're growing. It would be really good. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. It'd be good to make a few extra dollars doing this stuff. So since that show idea will take extra work, I feel like I don't feel bad asking people for a few dollars a month to watch it, because it will take more editing and more work to create it. But I have an idea. I just need to think about it more and think about how, if I'm just going to openly, kind of rag on other YouTubers, or if I'm going to make it not so intense and a little more tongue in cheek and not single out. I don't want to single anyone out. That's not what the show's about, but it's just my version of like an ass kissy type YouTuber. It's kind of like my version of that. And but using like kind of animations, like very rudimentary, like bad animation stuff, like basically just a GIF, like not even a GIF, just like a PNG character like moving up and down. Like you see me do it sometime on Venom vlog where it's like Venom the duck is moving by and stuff. Like you're going to see me do more and more of that because I want to try to get better at it so that I can use that to create this show. So yeah, so that's coming up. But yeah, we can still talk Venom stuff on Seek and Destroy episodes and Venom vlog episodes, but not on not on Seek and R. And then Alex and I are going to bring back Beyond the Source Wall, and that's also DC related. So no, my plan is to one day probably not talk about Venom that much anymore. I meant do what you need to do. Apologies, it seemed like I was over prying. Oh no. Yeah, so hopefully that, like I said, that's kind of my step by step of what I do, but I don't know what kind of seizure your sister has or anything like that. So I would ask a professional. Yeah, see, this is what happens when I talk too much. I was supposed to end the stream 30 minutes ago. Echo sounds like a good dog. Ours aren't trained so much as they seem to know to get us if something is happening and stay near her after she comes back because she tends to be highly upset. Yeah, it's a jarring experience. It's hard to explain to people who don't have them. Jesus, my throat's so dry tonight. That's why I'm drinking the ginseng, because I'm like, anyway, so yeah, it's jarring. It's a jarring experience having a seizure and what you feel like afterwards. There's a feeling of embarrassment sometimes, which is no reason to have it. You didn't do anything wrong, but it just comes naturally sometimes. Being upset, that all ties in. One, welcome your experimentation. I, for one, welcome your experimentation. I appreciate it, man. I think you guys will like it. It'll be different. I know it's not Venom related, but I think you'll see that I have quite the knowledge of the DC universe, and hopefully I can do, instead of focusing on one character, although Batman will be a major focus of Seek NR, the Batman family. Like I said, he's a good entry level character, and that's also where I get the name of the show from. Zur-NR, the Batman of Zur-NR, is Seek NR. That's where that comes from. So for sure, like I think Batman's a good entry level into the DC universe, and I'm going to definitely explore the DC universe. I wonder if they'll find a way to sneak a tie-in between MCU Pete and Venom 2. I don't know about that. Well, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know, because I hear all kinds of things. Some people saying like, oh, Sony has plans for Tom Holland Spider-Man and Venom meeting, but only after No Way Home. No Way Home is kind of its own thing, and it's like finishing off the MCU Spider-Man stuff or whatever. Like, but who knows? You can't like believe any of that stuff. Like, so it's gonna be tough. But I know a lot of people want to see Spider-Man in Venom 2, if nothing else, but as like an Easter egg cameo at the end. So who knows if they'll do that or not. You always keep creating, buddy. We're behind you all the way. I appreciate Neoscore. I appreciate that, man. Give Echo a scratch behind the ears for us. I will. That's the thing is, like I said, like we talked earlier about pain, transferring pain into something creative, and someone mentioned that they had parental issues, with their father and stuff, and that they wanted to create a TV show to kind of deal with that pain and anger. Which I think is a good thing to do something creative with that energy and not go shoot somebody. Like, that's not the solution, in my opinion. But going to create something artistic to share with the world that maybe has a small reflection of that pain, but also helps you move past it. I think that's good. And so I think that's what I seem to, even though I keep telling myself, do less, like your health is declining in some areas, you're going to have trouble creating stuff, do less, like stop pushing yourself. But then I always come back to, yeah, but creating isn't pushing me. Like, being creative is my release from the things that do push me. Like, I love my real life job where I go to, but it's hard to do physically sometimes because I have to interact with a lot of people, and I'm not used to that. Not only am I an introvert and a recluse type, and agoraphobic, so it's already hard to go outside anyway, but that's what Lego did to me. I was working inside doing comics for years, and I hated going out and going to meetings and stuff, meeting people. So I said, I'm going to get a retail job, and I'm going to start building my tolerance for people again and being around a lot of people. And I did, going through 5 years at Lego, and then now doing what I do now and stuff. So I've gotten better around people, but once I'm done at my job, I have to go home and not be around people. It's hard to, it's I have to, or else I can only keep up that energy and stuff for so long, right? So um but coming home, don't, trying to go to sleep is nice, my body needs to rest, but sitting here at the desk and making something, I'd much rather do that, personally, because I think that's my release from the pain, is me channeling the day and the shittiness of the day into a video or something creative. So this idea for the show thing I have is, I like the idea of scripting something, maybe even something funny, and trying to put some humor in there. If it comes across cringy, then I'll stop doing it. But my goal is to try. And the thing is, I think a lot of times people are afraid to try new things, and I want to constantly try new things. So that's why I'm gonna not let what I face beat me, because I haven't in 11 years. I haven't let it beat me. Well, I gave up once, but I'm still here. So my goal is to not let it beat me again. Your content, I'm sure, will be worth the money. I'll be a supporter, definitely. I appreciate it. I want to keep it really low. I want to keep it to either $1 or $2 a month. And then maybe over time, if I implement more ideas, it might go up to $5, but it will probably never go past $5. I just see it as a $1 to $2 thing right now. So I just got to figure out what I need and how to make it work, and how long each episode is going to be, and whether it's worth making. But I think I like the idea. So it's just a matter of making it work. So I'll figure it out. Sorry about bringing up Venom. That's okay. You're good, man. I'm so confused. Who are you and what have you done to Seek? What? No, Eddie's Mullet. It's me. It's me, the Venom vlog. Easier to be around a camera and keyboard than face to face. It's much easier. Yeah, I know. I think I mentioned that the other day, where sometimes YouTubers, they'll do these apology videos where they're like looking at the camera and they're like, I'm so sorry. And I'm being serious because I'm looking you right in the eyes. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're looking at a camera. You're looking at a camera, you sociopath. People highly overrated. Yeah, I don't know. People, I love people. They're my friend Erica and I used to talk about this all the time. She's like, I thought you hated people. Now you love people? And I'm like, well, I think that's the beauty of people, is that it's always a love-hate relationship with people. There are things people do that I hate. There are things people do that are amazing, of course, right? So it's hard to be all in on one side or the other. people are a mystery, man. They're very fascinating. I like people a lot. But they do get on my nerves. Waiting for Adult Swim to pick up the show. So that's my thought. Is I love Adult Swim. I love Aqua Teen Hunger Force and C Lab 2021 and the Brack Show and stuff. So this was kind of like, okay, how do I do like a really cheap version of that, where the animation it's not even anime. Like I said, it's going to be a background, and there's going to be like two characters, and when they talk, they'll move up. This one will move up and down, and then this one will move up and down, and it's literally, that's it. It's like that's the extent. That's all I know how to do right at this moment with characters. Have them do that and then walk across the screen. Like that's all I've been able to figure out. It's not easy animating stuff. So to me, I'm like, okay, what making, even South Park started really cheap, right? So I'm like, all right, let's just start with what you can, and don't worry so much about that form of the presentation. Just make sure the jokes are good, and that the show itself is something that people might want to tune into and laugh at. And my goal is, with the Seek and R show, I might go a little past 10 minutes sometimes, but my goal is to try to be under 10 minutes, because the average person has like a 15-minute lunch break, and that usually consists of like a minute or two going to the bathroom, and then going another minute to sit at their break table at their work and get out a drink and take a sip or two, and then go to YouTube, and then go, okay, I can watch a video now. So if I can keep these videos under 10 minutes, I feel like a lot of people who are working people who have a job every day, or have only like 15-20 minutes to spare in a day, if I keep the length down, I think it'll hopefully increase them watching all the way to the end. Because I notice a lot of times I make my videos that are like 20 to 40 minutes or an hour long, and people watch 5 minutes and then they stop watching. And it's like, oh man, like it gets really good in the last hour, half hour. So my plan with Seek and R and that kind of stuff is to compress it to under 10 minutes for that reason. I made it start over. What did I miss? Oh, dude, I'm so sorry. You'll have to. I'm going to end the show here in a minute. So what I would recommend you do, Eric, is right now just scroll all the way back to the beginning of the episode. And thank you for the 8 thumbs up, everyone. Scroll all the way back to the beginning, and for the first hour, the last 30 minutes, we've been kind of bullshitting, but for the first hour, we kind of answer your questions, and I even mentioned you in the beginning of the episode and said that this whole episode was because of you. So I would say we'll say our goodbyes now and go back and watch it from the beginning. And I'm gonna go get some rest because now this light is starting to bother me. And I used to be off on Mondays, but now I was able to get Mondays back. So I'm gonna go, I don't go until noon on Mondays, but it's another 6 hours of work. Basically, I was out for almost 2 weeks because of that surgery. I went back a week after my surgery, and I only lasted like 3 hours, and then I was sent home. And then I took a few more days off and tried to go back again, and I only lasted like 5 hours, and then I went home. And then it wasn't until almost two full weeks after my surgery did I go back to work and work a full day. And because of that, I missed a lot of money. My job is not just paid hourly, but I get paid in commission based on sales. Well, I can't hit my sales goal if I'm not there. So luckily, my boss was able to work with me on something with that. So I might be able to still get some kind of bonus if I hit the tier. But I have tomorrow. I got to make my sales tomorrow to do it, to get a little small bonus, some kind of bonus at the end of the next check. So I'm grateful that he gave me that opportunity, and I want to earn it. I want to do it. But I did miss on 2 weeks of pay. My check came in on Friday, and I was the smallest check I think I've ever seen in years. And I got emotional over it, and I felt like a failure, and I realized I didn't have enough to pay rent. And I text my mom, who is just as broke as I am, and I'm like, Mom, I'm sorry. Like, I think I'm going to get evicted. Like, I'm trying to sell stuff right now online to make up the difference. I offered someone my entire Transformer collection, and I said, dude, I'll give it to you for like $400, like the whole collection, and just so I could have, because I'm $400 short from rent. And he was like, dude, I can't take your stuff. And he's like, but if you're in a pinch, I can let you borrow something. And I'm like, no, I'll get back to you. I don't want to borrow too much. My friend Alex is letting me borrow a little bit, but my mom saved my ass. She said, hey, she did her taxes, and she's like, I'm getting some tax money, so I can help you out. And then you can, pay me back slowly, or, whatever, if she even asked for it, because she might not even ask for it. But she's like, look, you didn't ask for this. Getting that surgery wasn't your fault. You've been trying to do everything you can to stay healthy and everything, but you needed to get it done, and it put you out of commission longer than you thought it was. It was harder to bounce back, but it's not your fault. And she's like, in the position you're in is not your fault, and you shouldn't have to sell your stuff just to get by. And I'm like, yes, I should. That's what being an adult is like, you got to let go of things and sell them so you can pity. And my mom's like, you don't need to do that. I'm going to help you out. So between her and my friend Alex, I'm going to be good. Thank God. So the whole reason I'm working so hard and work this weekend and working and picked up the extra hours tomorrow is because I want that bonus, because I need that bonus to pay Alex back. Because I don't want to owe a friend money, So it's just been a tough month. But now that the surgery's out of the way, I will work every day next month, and now I've picked up Mondays again, so that means my checks will be bigger, and it'll give me more of a chance to hit my sales goals, which means I have a better chance of getting my bonus too, which is nice. So we will get through it. It's just a bad month, that's all. If Adult Swim has taught me anything, it's I'm capable of drawing a cartoon. Yes. Rest well. Are you eligible for Social Security? No, not yet. And we did look into a temporary disability for a while, which I was on, but I didn't stay on. And it's hard to get disability because when they look at you and go, yeah, but you seem normal. Like, can you run a register? I'm like, yeah. And they go, can you stand for 6 hours a day? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, okay, well then here's the jobs that you can do. And it's like, so, but I don't want a disability either. I want to work. I like working. Like, I like having a job. Ever since I went back to retail, when I left comic books, I was like, I want to go do a real job and be around real people and get better at selling and hand selling stuff and getting better at talking to people and get out of my reclusive bubble where I'm just sitting in this house all day and making phone calls and sending emails. Like, I wanted more personal connection. And now that I've had it for these past like 7 years, I don't want to let go of it. This is one thing I don't want to let go of. I like being around people, and I like problem solving, and I like when people come in and if they're having a rough day, I like to try to figure out how to make it better for them. Like, hey, okay, what can I do to make it better? Or just like this today, this guy opened up and told me this whole story about his dad passing away, and how it was just opened up to me. He was like, I don't. He told me, because I don't even know why I'm telling you all this. He's like, you didn't ask me for any of this, and I go, well, no, I didn't, but but I'm glad you're telling someone. It sounds like you need to get this off your chest. And I go, so keep talking, man. Tell me about what's going on. Like, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. Like, what was his name? Like, what was what's your favorite memory of him? And stuff like that. And the guy was like, dude, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything, but I could tell he was bothered. And I've been there. So to me, I'm like, I don't know. I like what I do. So it was nice. And then I had another guy who came in today who said he's from New Orleans. And he's like, yeah, no one, when I went to New Orleans and shopped at that Harley, no one talked to me. I'd go in, no one said hi to me. No one asked me if I needed help with anything. And he's like, he's like, you've come over like, twice, check in on me. You told me that you lived on Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that you used to go to, New Orleans all the time for, to eat and get, gumbo and stuff. And he's like, I'm definitely going to come back and shop. He's like, I just moved here from New Orleans. And he goes, and you're the friendliest person I've met in Florida so far. And I go, sweet. And he goes, I'm coming back. And I go, that's what it's about, man. That's how I keep my job is I just give people, I just give them that feeling like, hey, I'm welcomed here. And then they go, okay, I'll come back. And I'm like, that's what I want. So that's what I try to do with this YouTube channel, which is why I really do hate it when we get like a troll or I have to block someone or something. It's like, I want to be as welcoming as possible. But some people just are assholes, or they just want to troll because they think it's funny. And it's like, that's fine. It's your life. But I like just connecting with people here. So I appreciate you, man. Keep up the hard work. You're welcome, Eric. And enjoy the video. Thank you for helping me come up with this idea, for asking me that question, because we went through a lot of books here, and I think we made some strong recommendations for people like you and other people that want to like get into comics again. I told you get people to open up like Barbara Walters. Yeah, my mom tells me my grandfather was like that. She said, it's a shame you don't remember your grandpa that much, because you get that from him. Like, apparently he could just go and sit on a bench, and then people would just walk over and sit next to him, and then he would start talking to them, and they would just tell him their whole life story. And she said my grandpa was the best at that. And she's like, you got that. Like, whatever that is, you have that ability. And so that's nice to hear. I think that's a cool superpower, to get people to feel welcome. like to me, I'm like, how many of us have shitty days? Like I had a really shitty day not too long ago, and someone opened up to, like, they let me open up to them, and I was like, wow, that is a good feeling to like have someone to kind of talk to like that. So yeah, so I'll be there when I can. The shows aren't going to be all about that, obviously. They're going to be mostly about comics, but I will try to keep an open dialogue. And like I said, I created a second Instagram account called seek.n.arrh, seek.n.r. You can look that up on Instagram. It's an open account. You can follow it. You don't have to send me a request, because on my main Instagram, I'm going to probably go through the whole thing and delete people and unfollow people, and force them to unfollow me if I don't know you in real life. So I'm probably going to go down to like maybe 100 or 200 people, maybe, if that. I'm going to start deleting people on that and trying to redirect people over to the other account, which is literally just going to be me posting single images, comic reviews or movie reviews, things like that. Stuff I don't feel like I have time to make videos on, but that I still want to talk about. And each post will end in a question asking you to tell me what you think of either that book or something like it. And if you go to that page right now, you'll see a couple of examples. And then twice a month, I will do the live Instagram stories, and I will talk to you guys live on that account twice a month. We'll probably do like, somewhere around the middle of the month and somewhere around the end of the month. And that'll be I think that'll be nice to get more interactive over there, but also keep things just about comics and not talk about my personal life. So thank you again. Yeah, I gotta go. It's almost midnight, and like I said, I gotta work in 12 hours, but who knows if I'll be able to fall asleep immediately. Unfortunately, I had a guy, like my neighbor last night, was blasting music at like 4 in the morning. He woke me up at 4 a.m. And I'm like, God dang it, it was so loud. And I banged on the wall, and he turned it up actually after I banged on the wall. I said, screw that. So I came in here with Echo, and we slept on the couch bed over here. Like, I folded the couch down into a bed, and I was like, and because this room's kind of sound insulated. So it has all the pads on the wall and stuff. So I was like, all right, we'll just try to sleep in here. But the thing is, I can't sleep on this couch for too long because it hurts my shoulder, which, still hurting. So I had to give up my bed last night to sleep on this couch because of some asshole. So yeah, so hopefully he doesn't play loud music tonight, because I want to get an actual good night's sleep. But thank you guys for the support. Thank you for everything. Thanks for being willing to try out these new show ideas with me. Don't worry, Venom vlog is not going anywhere. I know I put up like 8 Venom vlogs in the span of a week. I know I promised more by now, but some days when I have off, I do take the time to rest, or I'm not healthy enough to record myself. And I don't want you guys to see me like that, because I want the episodes to be about the content and not about me when I can, when I do those pre-recorded episodes. So for that, I will have those. I'll try to get some more Venom vlogs out to you later this week. And then in June, we're going to do a Carnage week, and that'll completely catch us up on Carnage. And then in the month of July, we're going to do Peter Parker in the black costume. We're going to go through all those comics, and I'll try to get through the last 2 Chillers parts between now and the end of June as well. And then the last few King in Black stories. So we'll get through all that. So we'll have some fun in June. Any movie news that pops up, obviously we'll cover the biggest of it. I won't cover every piece of movie news, but we'll cover some of it. And then maybe I'll let a couple of the smaller pieces of news build up, and we'll do a live discussion, and we'll talk about all 3 or 4 of those topics in a live stream like this. So yeah, that dude is a dick. You're right, but whatever. Who knows? Maybe he's having a bad day. So that's it for me. I'm going to go to bed now. I appreciate you guys and everything that you guys do for me, and the fact that you even are willing to see what the new stuff I have coming up with. That's awesome. I think that's great to hear, that you're going to, let me take this risk and you're going to give it a shot. But the Venom vlog's not going anywhere. Like I said, not until the end of the year. I don't plan on ending that show until we get through the movie coming out, the reviews, the DVD, the Blu-ray, like all that stuff. So I'm not planning on ending that show until maybe like December. So literally at the end of the year. So don't worry, Venom vlog's not going anywhere. So you can still come here for Venom vlog stuff, but I will slowly be peppering in the future of this channel, which is Seek NR and Beyond the Source Wall and Seek and Destroy. And then maybe occasionally we'll do Venom stuff on the Seek and Destroy show. But my plan is around episode 750 or 800 to end the Venom vlog. And then maybe when they do a 3rd movie, maybe we'll still do Venom trailer reactions and stuff like that. And we'll still kind of do a few movie things. But we probably won't ever go back to the comic books again. Whatever they're going to do after Donny Cates, it's fine. We had a good run. We covered a lot of Venom stuff. And if anyone ever wants to write or draw the character in the future, they literally have a whole library of videos here that they can come back and watch. So yeah, doing No Way Home news. No, I don't want to do movie news anymore. I'll be honest with you. I did some of the Resident Evil stuff on my gaming channel, but once that movie comes out, I probably won't do any more Resident Evil content after that. And I'll probably only post video game streams on there again. And then here, probably not. I mean, I will talk about DC animated movie news because I am on their press list and they send me stuff. So they've been sending me things for Batman: The Long Halloween animated movies that are coming out. And for, I guess soon I'll be getting stuff for Injustice, the animated movie. So yeah, and also the new anime coming out called Trisei. I did a video on that, which has almost 500 views, which is awesome because I think that's my first video about an anime that I've ever done on this channel. So that's great that it got that many views. So I will be reviewing that show when it comes out, and I'll probably be reviewing the Trisei comic book whenever I buy it. So I think Volume 1 is out now, and 2 and 3 come out soon. So I'll probably wait till all 3 are out, and I'll probably buy all 3 together. But yeah, I will just follow DC animated movie news and anything that Warner Brothers Home Entertainment sends me and Netflix sends me. I'll follow those, but I probably won't follow movies ever again like the way we did Venom vlog. Probably not. Sorry to say. But never say never. We'll see. All right. I'm going, guys. Thank you so much. I love you all, and I'll see you in the future.